Buying a brand new gaming computer can be expensive, so what if you only had about $500 to spend? What are your options? Well, with a little bit of effort, I was able to put together this all-white RTX Gaming PC, and would you believe me if it only cost me $421.65? And it can play the latest games like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 at over 60 FPS at 1080p, plus it's fantastic for esports games. If you've been wanting a gaming PC but don't have a lot of money to spend, this computer build might be the perfect option for you. I bought a mix of new and used components, and I believe this build is repeatable for most of you watching. I'll be going over all the parts, and I'll share some gaming benchmarks at the end. The start of this build is of course a CPU from Intel, because they have really nailed the price to performance in the past, is what I would have said if I wasn't using an AMD CPU. I decided to go with the Ryzen 5 3600. Why? Well, it's 6 cores with hyper-threading, decent clock speeds, but most importantly, it has the same amount of L3 cache as the best budget CPU for AM5. Basically, everything I said means it's really good for gaming, and the best part, you can buy it for $60 or less. At the end of the video, I'll share a full breakdown of the build, so if you want to copy it, you'll know exactly what to pay for each part to stay within budget. If you are going to build this computer, you'll need a Windows key. Super CDK has been my go-to spot for affordable Windows 11 keys and Windows 10 keys. Instead of buying an overpriced key from Microsoft, just visit Super CDK with the links down below, and be sure to use the discount code SPLA to save money on any Microsoft products. You can get Windows 11 keys for $22 or Windows 10 for $15. Once you purchase the key, all you have to do is copy and paste it into your window activation settings, click activate, and bam, you activated Windows and saved some money. Thank you to Super CDK for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check them out with the links below. Now, I paired our CPU with a motherboard from one of my favorite sites, AliExpress. I managed to buy this all-white Machinist B450 motherboard. Did I mention it's all white? Pretty bare bones motherboard, doesn't bring much to the table, but it at least will support our CPU with no issues, and it does it at a great price of $41.90. Normally it's 50 bucks, but if you buy it on a sale, then you save money because, you know, that's how sales work. As a heads up, you'll also have to buy a CR2032 battery because they don't ship it with the CMOS battery. If you can't or won't buy from AliExpress, then just buy a cheap used one on eBay, or if you must buy from Amazon, try not to spend any more than $60. But really, AliExpress is your best option, and I have everything linked below. For RAM, I kept it simple with a 32GB kit of DDR4 clocked at 3200 MHz. I only went with 32GB because our motherboard only has 2 RAM slots, so I figured might as well. This RAM was actually bought from AliExpress as well, and I paid $42.67. I also kept the storage super simple with an M.2 1TB SSD, more specifically from Kingspec, and this is a Gen 3 drive. You honestly don't need any more than Gen 3, especially if you're on a budget. Before we install the motherboard in the case, we need to cool that Ryzen 5, and for that, I went with a budget-friendly option from ID Cooling for $17.25. It has 4 heat pipes, and it comes with an addressable RGB fan, so this thing will look great in the build. Now it's time for the case. We needed something micro ATX to house the motherboard and the rest of the components. We had to be careful because overpaying on a case can be so easy, and we don't want to waste the budget on that, but I still wanted something that looks good. I went with the DIY PC Cube 01 with no fans. They have an option with fans, but honestly, I'd rather use these. This is a 3-pack of ARGB fans from Sama, and they were on sale for $10. They also came with a hub so I can hook up the CPU cooler and control all the lights together with the included remote. The case was $58.71, and after adding the fans, it came to $69.57. You can get cheaper cases on AliExpress, but shipping takes a long time. Stay tuned in the future because I ordered 10 cases from AliExpress. And like I said, overpaying on a case can be easy. I honestly paid a little more than I wanted to, but it'll all be good. Now the next part is the power supply, and I feel this is the most controversial PC component, so go and leave your thoughts in the comments because I know someone will. I went with the Thermaltake Smart 700 watt. The newer units come with all black cables, but this one was $28.96 on eBay, and we got the power cord. I tested the voltage on the power supply tester, and this thing will have no issues powering this computer. If this video never makes it out, I'm probably gonna sue Thermaltake for selling me a bomb, because why would anyone do that? Okay, last part, the graphics card. I went with the most affordable RTX GPU that you can buy right now for around $100 to $120, but honestly, I see people pay a lot less than that. I spent $108.75, and I got this Gigabyte RTX 2060 with 6GB of VRAM. Now, it was all black, but I had to change that, so I stripped it down and applied a few coats of some white spray paint. You don't have to do this, but I wanted to build a super sweet budget white computer. Plus, when I sell this on my Java page, it being being all white should help with the cell. Last part I added to this build, it's not necessary at all, and it's these all white cable extensions that I bought from AliExpress. But now let's take a look at the gaming benchmarks, and as I said, it can handle Black Ops 6, so let's start there. I played at native 1080p with a mix of basically all low or normal settings, and the only ones I set to high were the texture resolution and detail quality. I decided to not use any upscaling just to see the raw performance of the computer, and it's safe to say without any upscaling, you can still play this game and get above 60 FPS. But of course, if you have an NVIDIA RTX GPU, you might as well use DLSS. With DLSS, we saw about a 47% increase in our average FPS, and honestly, I can't tell a difference in the visual quality. The game still looks decent, but I'll take the extra performance for basically nothing. For another harder to run game, I loaded Cyberpunk with the in-game benchmarking tool. I set it to 1080p with the high settings preset, and by default it enabled AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution, so I left it as is. It's nice to see a AAA title above 60 FPS. We averaged 85 with a 1% low of 58. For an easier to run game, I tested out Apex Legends. For the settings, I used 1080p with max FOV and I had TSAA turned on. And then I set the texture options to high and everything else was on low. This game always looks good. Even if we used all low settings, this game doesn't get super grainy, which I really like about it. With the settings I used, I was able to average 137 FPS with a 1% low of 100. Now, of course, I had to include some benchmarks for Fortnite. I decided to first test it in performance mode with pro settings because I know someone is curious. For settings, I used far view distance and everything else was on low, even the 3D resolution was at 0%. Now these settings give you a very solid average FPS of 213, but I'm curious if anyone actually uses these settings. I mean, the game doesn't look all that great, but yeah, the FPS is actually really good. Unlike my snipes, I was straight up a bot. Now, if you want a more balanced experience, I prefer to use DirectX 12 with TAA on, 100% 3D resolution scale, far view distance, and then everything else on low. The graphics look much better than before, and we are still getting a very solid 186 average FPS with a 1% low of 75. For a final benchmark, I ran 3D Mark Time Spy and we scored 7,584. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the performance from this computer, and I know I would have loved this as my first gaming PC. Now, there is always the argument if you should build something like this or just save up and build something all new. Well, if you've had that thought, just ask yourself if you really need something all new or if this fits your needs perfectly fine. Most of the time, people just want the feeling of something all new. They don't actually need it. But if you do want to build a computer like this, then on screen right now is a full breakdown of the whole build. I shared what prices I paid for each part and the max prices you should pay for each part to stay within budget, which is to be under $500. And of course, you can save extra money by getting a cheaper case and not buying cable extensions. And I will have every part linked down below, as well as all the tools I used to assemble this thing. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash the like button, subscribe if you loved it, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.